This is an I survive kind of story. Hope people learn from it. I dated this guy, we'll say his name is Jack. So me and Jack dated on and off during junior year back in 2010. We even went to prom together. Him being a senior and me a junior. I felt special by that back then. I broke up with him late May because he was too jealous and controlling. That's when me and this guy, Jason is the name, I will use in this story, found each other again. We dated 2 years prior to this happenstance. Me and Jason got along great, this time around, and it seemed really great. We went to the Walmart one night while my ex Jack was messaging me saying he was gonna kill himself. Even stated he took a handful of pills and was gonna drive his Nissan Xterra and hope a pole wasn't in his way. To my mind, Jason's surprise, of course, I kept him in the loop. We saw Jack in Walmart with his brother, looking sober and just fine. Jason being 6'4" and Jack standing at 5'9". We didn't think we had to worry about leaving without a problem. Our mistake. Jack and his brother called a couple of people to show up, to make sure that nothing was going to happen. Funny thing was that Jason called his redneck friend. We'll call him Everett. And of course rednecks have guns. Me and Jason walked out of the store and there was Jack and his brother waiting by his car, stating how they'll fuck us up. I had to basically do everything my 90-pound ass could do to keep Jason away, which consisted of getting in his way. Not wanting to run me over, Jack's brother pulled out a crowbar and Everett pulled out a gun. Ready to fuck shit up, Jack saw what Everett had in his hand and saw no fear on any of our faces, and told his brother they're leaving, and they do, along with 2 other cars. Go figure, on the lie of being suicidal about me. Nothing new with Jack. He was usually like that with any chick he had been with. This is a different story, including Jason and Everett. So me and Jason were dating for a few weeks when this story came around. We'll start towards the beginning. Me and Jason were seemingly happy enough. Friction from my side due to him breaking up with me 2 years prior. We had gone to Walmart and got some alcohol, Jack Daniels and Coke, for the obvious mixed drink. Everett, Jason, and I went to Everett's apartment to go drink safely, and without having to drive. The night goes on and Jason passes out on the couch, while I was holding his hand. He, I guess, had a bad dream at times, because he almost broke my hand. Everett had to jump in while I was screaming for Jason to wake up. Everett had already broken the connection and Jason jumped up ready to fight. He didn't realize what had happened until a few days later, when I decided to tell him. He apologized, but I felt super weird about it. I don't know what a red flag instinct was at the time, so therefore it just felt awkward from the little emotions that I knew. A couple weeks later is when the trauma took place. He was always different, weird, off-putting. I figured it was okay because I'm different as well. Holy shit, was I wrong. Jason had revealed to me that when a full moon came around, he was always more aggressive, and usually way more easier to be angered. Kind of like a werewolf mentality complex. Of course, I was young and naive. Didn't know any better about how full of it he was. He had explained to me that he had never found an out for his aggression, and I thought sex was a good idea for him. The day of this full moon, he threw a few red flags. His anger towards video games, unsatisfaction towards food, and towards his mom, sweetest lady still to this day a decade later. Towards the evening, I started getting nervous and was second-guessing myself. I spoke my words to him and he didn't get mad, just detached about the conversation. The conversations never got completed because I never stood up for myself back then. As night fell, things got serious very fast. He was a lot meaner than I anticipated, and I made up my mind of us doing anything was a bad idea. I was 5'3" and 90 pounds, whereas he was 6'4" and 220 pounds, at least, so overpowering me became an issue. When it came down to taking my idea serious, I wasn't okay with it anymore. because I got scared. I told him no on the whole sex idea, and maybe we should just watch a movie. I was living with Jason at the time, and he didn't like my answer. He started kissing me and taking my clothes off. I told him to stop and that I wasn't okay with having sex at night anymore. He didn't listen to me and forcefully took my clothes off while I was trying to fight him. I kept telling him no, but he just kept saying that he needed this. Shit escalated and I had no control anymore. After he was finished, I got dressed numbly and straight up left and went to the park about a mile away. Went into the middle of this field and just sat down. Still don't remember how I got there, as I had my arms wrapped around my knees, held to my chest, sitting up and zoned the fuck out. This guy was walking to me. I still don't know what he said while he was walking to me, but he stood about 8 feet from me, shocked still, kinda like he was waiting for me to decide whether he was real or not. This guy, Kyle is his real name, just kept waiting, probably about 15 minutes for me to take in fact of whether I should decide danger or not. He asked me, "Are you okay?" And I didn't answer. He asked me if I had a place to stay for the night. I just shook my head no, due to me not going back to where I came from. He told me that he lived just a couple blocks away and I could come with him, if I wanted. And nothing will hurt me there, considering he lived by himself. At this point, I didn't care if anyone hurt me anymore, just numb. I got up and just stood still, like a statue not blinking and barely breathing. He reached out as if he wanted to take my hand. I still didn't move, feeling completely dead on the inside. Holding his hand out for approximately about 5 minutes straight, he finally came towards me slowly, like I was a rabbit ready to sprint. He made connection with my hand, which was cold. I didn't feel the contact, whether it was psychological or because it was winter with no coat. I still don't know. Kyle held onto my hand waiting for me to decide whether to run or just be led, as if he actually cared for about another 10 minutes. When I didn't leave, but I also didn't really register the reality of anything. He started leading me to his house. I don't remember the way of what the house looked like, but I vividly remember him and what he did for me. As soon as we step into the house with all the lights on, he looks straight at me and immediately gets this pissed off look across his face, and I shrink away. He covers it up and apologizes, stating that he's not used to these situations. He asked me if I got abused. I looked down at the floor. He asked if I knew the guy. Tears started forming. He drew a deep breath and asked if I wanted a shower. The tears started flowing as I nodded. He then asked me if I needed help, and I shrugged like, what else could go wrong tonight? He took me by the hand, more definitely this time, and led me to his bathroom and started the shower. I still don't know whether the water was warm or cold to this day, but he asked me whether I needed help out of my clothes, and I just shut down completely. Other than breathing, that's my only function consciously being made. He slowly took his clothes off while keeping his on the whole time, helped me in the shower and began cleaning me off very carefully, washing my hair, my body, all the while having nothing but sadness in his eyes. After I was all cleaned off and began having pruned up skin, he grabbed a towel, turned the water off, and toweled me off. He finished and looked a bit lost, considering I didn't have an extra set of clothes with me. I just held the towel close to my body, still numb. He held out his hand and I, ever so fucking slowly, took what was offered and followed where he led me. He had made his bed before he even left to go to the park, so he pulled his blankets back to let me in. He just sat with me, not saying anything or doing anything. At some point I fell asleep. I woke up screaming my lungs out and he was right there, shaking me awake. I lost all resolve, sobbing to the point of trying to throw up and only succeeding of dry heaving. When that episode passed, he tried to leave, but I grabbed a hold of his hand and asked him to stay with me. Maybe the nightmares won't be so bad if you stay by me, I told him, and he didn't argue, still looking sad towards me. I woke up in the morning with him beside me, and I was petrified at first. remembering what should have never been possible was, and it did happen. I started crying again and sadly woke him up with me crying, being all curled up in the fetal position. He wasn't mad, but completely upset that I woke up upset. He pulled me to him and I sniffled, forgetting that guys wake up with morning wood, terrified something was gonna happen. He told me, "Don't worry, nothing forceful will happen to you here," and I let loose. I broke the fuck down and spent the next 3 days with him. I found out why he had such a sad loom in his eyes. That night I had massive bruises on my neck, a mixture of handprints and bite marks that lasted for a few weeks, that I got teased about at work, painfully. If it wasn't for Kyle, then I wouldn't know what I would have done, or even became to this day, if he wasn't there to rescue my disparaged soul. After those 3 days, I went back to Jason and told him I was moving out, and we were breaking up. The whole time I couldn't make eye contact with him. He fortunately understood what he did and left for me to pack and get the fuck out. Years later, I had to reach out to him to tell him some horrid news, and he actually apologized about what had happened. If it wasn't for Kyle, I would have never moved on the way I did. I forgave Jason, but I'll never forget.
I'm gonna preface this story by saying I was incredibly naive. My best friend, Jay, used to work in a restaurant in a very bad area. She had moved there from our little suburb about 35 minutes away. I still live in the suburb with my parents, so my street smarts weren't the best. This was 3 years ago, and I was 19 at the time, so driving around to visit friends was and is one of my favorite pastimes. One day, I decided to stop by the restaurant to see Jay, as I'd done a few times before, and I was friends with all of her co-workers. My friend was busy, and she made me wait around with a few of the others for a bit until her break, then came to chat with me. At this time, I was very anti-purse and just kept a wristlet. After chatting for about 30 minutes, I left the restaurant and walked back into my car. After driving for a while, I noticed I left the wristlet, so I texted Jay telling her to grab it for me and where I had probably left it. I already knew that there was going to be a possibility that it was gone, being that I had left it in a busy restaurant in the center of the city, and Jay confirmed that it was indeed gone. My dad cancelled my credit cards, but I was still holding on to the hope that it would have been returned to me, as I had my ID in it. The next day, I get a text from Jay. She tells me someone called the restaurant to say that they had the wallet and that she had given them my number. I was really happy about this, but knew I would have to meet up with the stranger, so I decided not to tell my parents. I didn't get a text until the next morning. The person said that they had the wallet and wanted to give it back, but never a name or a description. I didn't care. I thanked them profusely and asked when I could meet them. Hours later, they replied with an address and told me to stop by around 9 p.m. The address was about 20 minutes from the restaurant, which was already a really bad area, but that didn't worry me as I left my wallet right around that area. I get there around 9, and this is when I start to get freaked out. The house looked like it was previously a row home, but the one connecting it to the rest had been demolished. The windows were boarded up and there were no lights coming from inside. The place was obviously abandoned, grass overgrown, weeds everywhere, graffiti all over it. You get the idea. The door, however, was not boarded up and I could see it was ajar. I texted the number and the person replied a second later telling me to come in. It was early summer, so while it wasn't completely dark out, it was getting there, and I wouldn't need a flashlight to see. So what do? Well, I turn on my flashlight, get out of my car and look around in hopes of seeing someone. Nothing. So, phone flashlight in hand, I start walking up the dry, rotted wooden steps to the front door. I crack the door open further, and it's completely black. When I shine my flashlight around, I can see that there is no furniture. I thought I heard some quiet creaking from upstairs, which I thought was strange. Why would the person text me to come in, but they'd be hiding upstairs? At this point, I knew there was something very wrong. I was scared as hell, and I hightailed it back to my car. I should have pulled around the corner, but I didn't. I just called the police right there. 2 policemen arrived shortly after and walked right into the house with 2 flashlights. Then 2 more pull up. They were inside for a long time, then they come out, with them, in handcuffs, are 2 skinny, scraggly, homeless-looking guys. I only got a good look at one of them, but I do remember the guy had visible sores on his face and arms, and I assume they are drug-related. As the cops walk them by my car, one of the guys looks right at me with the angriest expression I have ever fucking seen. 2 of the officers came over to talk to me, and they had indeed found my wallet, and all my money was gone, but the rest was intact. The cops reprimanded me for being so stupid. I drove home and never spoke to my parents of it. Only recently have I told them about what happened. I'll never know what those guys were planning. Was it just messing with me, and I called the cops over 2 random homeless guys? I never got another text from that number, and I started carrying a purse instead. So, gross creepy abandoned house man, let's never meet.
I was 17 to 18 when this happened, and this was a couple of years ago. My dad wanted to go to town from a smaller suburb to go work out, and I wanted to go to the big downtown library. I'm a bit of a book nerd. We ended up just carpooling, and he would pick me up when he was done working out. He said it would just be an hour and a half, which was fine. Everything was fine for most of the hour and a half. I picked out the books I wanted and sat down at a table on the main level and started reading one of them. Due to the large homeless population in the downtown area of the city, a lot of homeless people went to the library to get out of the weather, have access to toilets and water, etc. I'd been there plenty of times before, and most of the time they're minding their own business, and I'd never had any problems. I even met one of my previous high school friends who had dropped off the radar about junior year. There one time. Different story, different time. Today though, I noticed a guy staring at me from a table near me. He was 25 to 30, and sitting with a group of other people, and they all looked homeless. He wasn't talking to any of the people he was sitting with, which was really just odd. I ignored him as well as I could, but kept staring at me, and it was hard to concentrate on my book. By this point, it had almost been an hour and a half, and only about 10 minutes until my dad was supposed to be there. So I got up, checked out my book, and taking my time trying to waste it near the front desk, I went to stand outside to wait for my dad after a while. It was dusk now, and I felt a bit strange waiting in the darkness. But there were still plenty of people around, so I wasn't too nervous. I waited until past the time my dad was supposed to pick me up, but I didn't want to go back inside because I thought librarians might have wondered why I was coming in and out. Social anxiety can be a bitch, yeah. Staring dude comes out, and I tried to move to one side, hoping he wouldn't notice me, because I had just a bad feeling about him. He saw me though, after looking around almost like he'd come out after me, and started walking directly towards me. I started walking towards the parking lot away from him, and in my panic I forgot that it was a dead end, and had no exits anywhere, as it was built on the slope of a hill that the library was built on, and overlooked a 30-foot drop. At this point I was freaking out and texting my best friend, who I'd been texting and Snapchatting the whole time I was there. He was telling me to try to get back to the people, and if not, I should call the police. I turned around, the guy was standing at the entrance, just staring at me like he had been in the library. I turned around and started walking along the end of it, seeing if there was an exit at all, and there wasn't. When I looked back, the guy was gone. Maybe he thought I was going to my car or something, I don't know. I sprinted out of the parking garage and back to the entrance. Also very well populated with people. This is a pretty big library. I walked through the whole library, trying to shake his tail, or whatever. It was the only thing that made sense to me right then. And then my dad texted me to let me know that he was there, and I headed to the front again. I never told him what had happened, because I know he would have felt bad for being late. It was scary as hell, and overall, I felt very threatened by the guy, even though he didn't do anything. I don't know what he was planning to do. What's even scarier though is that I never saw where he went. Seeing him go would have given me some sort of closure, but it still freaks me out driving or walking past the library. So, creepy library dude, let's not meet.
This all started about a year ago. I, a 23-year-old female, live on the second floor of an apartment complex and lived here my entire life. The building is mostly comprised of families with young children and married couples. A lot of the families have lived here as long as my family has, so everyone knows each other pretty well. There is only one apartment unit that isn't occupied by a family, but rather a pair of brothers who keep to themselves. One day, one of their sons around my age had appeared out of the blue. He was strange right off the bat. He would always wear a sweatshirt with the hood up and would run through the apartment complex to get to his apartment. I'm not sure what his face looks like because he always had the hood over his face. He lived on the first floor and would often get into his place by jumping through the window. He basically did everything in his power to avoid any interaction. I didn't mind him because I never saw him due to my busy schedule. However, one day he started sitting on the top of the staircase that leads to my apartment. This was strange because his apartment unit was on the other side of the complex and on the first floor. I brushed it off at first, but it started happening every day. When I would come home from school, he was there, and when my boyfriend at the time would drop me off at night, typically around 10:30 to 11 p.m., he would be there. Sometimes when I would leave and come back hours later, he would still be in the exact same spot, as if he didn't move through the 5+ hours that I was gone. At this point, I told my parents and my boyfriend, and they became very vigilant. My boyfriend would park his car and walk me to the door every night, and once he saw my boyfriend, he stopped sitting on the staircase, and I thought it was over, but it wasn't. He started waiting for me at the bus stop. The bus I take home from school stops right across the street from my home, so it's a short walk. One day, when I was getting off, I saw him waiting at the bus stop. Once he saw me get off, he followed me into the complex and sat on my staircase. He also started following me when I would walk my dog. At this point, my parents were upset. My mom started letting the neighbors know that he was following me around, and the neighbors started making sure he wasn't bothering me or if I was alone, and they would start a conversation with me until I got to the door. One day, I got a friend request on Facebook from this guy. Mind you, he had never spoken a word to me, so how did he know my name or let alone find me on Facebook? My mom tried talking to his father, but they would never answer the door when my mom knocked the door. So I'm thinking, it can't possibly get worse, right? He seemed harmless, so I wasn't too worried. I was wrong. One day, when I returned from my boyfriend's house, my mom told me she had something to tell me, but she didn't want me to get spooked. She proceeded to tell me that when she was walking towards the kitchen to get a glass of water, she saw something in the tree move. Our kitchen had a huge window that takes up most of the wall, and in front of the window is a huge tree. If someone were to climb into the tree, you could see into our apartment. Well, guess what? When my mom took a closer look, she realized that my neighbor was sitting in the tree looking straight into my apartment. My mom called my dad, and when my neighbor saw my dad, he jumped off the tree. At that moment, I felt my peace stolen from me. We filed a police report, but when the police went looking for him, he was gone. It turned out that there was snack wrappers and a blanket hidden in between the leaves of the tree. The police think that wasn't the first time he was up there. I couldn't help but wonder how many times he saw me walking around and I had no idea. It's been 6 months and I haven't seen him since. His father still lives in the complex, but there's no sight of him. The police haven't been able to find him, so I have no idea what happened to him, but I hope we never meet again.
So before I begin, I'm fully aware that this story sounds like something made up, but I promise that it's 100% true, and still creeps me out a lot to this day. So about 6 months ago, a group of 5 of my friends and myself went to a popular party holiday destination in Europe. During the time we were there, we had quite a few creepy encounters with different people. So, one night we get ready and head to the Strip, a road filled with bars and clubs, and we went out partying for a few hours. Our hotel was only a 5 to 10 minute walk home, along a straight road, so it was very easy to get back after a night out. The 6 of us are out partying, and then 4 of the girls decide they're too tired and are going to head home, so just myself and one of our friends are left at the club. But this doesn't really bother us because we are having a great time. At about 4 a.m., we decide to start walking home, as we were beginning to get tired. As I said before, the walk back to our hotel was a straight road, but there was also a beach along the front, and you can walk along there to get home too, and it just takes longer. But it was a nice night, and we decided we wanted to go and sit at the beach for a while. We were at the beach for maybe 20 minutes, and then start walking home again. To get back to the hotel from the beach, we had to walk up a quiet street that joins us back onto the main, along with some clubs and bars and restaurants, and then walk up a small hill to the hotel. As we're walking up the quiet street, there didn't seem to be anyone around, and I desperately needed to use a toilet at this point. If you've ever been drunk and a girl, especially, you'll know that you need to go ASAP. So I asked my friend to stop and wait for me whilst I went around the small corner to pee quickly. Gross, I know, but there's no public toilets nearby. When I came back around the corner, I saw my friend standing in the middle of the street tying her shoelace. We had just been at the beach and didn't have shoes on before we started walking home, because her feet were sandy. She saw me come out and said that she would just be a second. She was just finishing her laces, and as she said that, I looked behind her, where there was a garden with some bushes, and noticed that there was a man standing there staring at us. So I went up to her and quietly said I could see a man in the bushes, so we needed to go now. As she stands up, the man in the bushes moves more into the light. We see that he was fully naked, with the exception of a balaclava on, and has a bat in his hands. We both just scream and start sprinting. She wasn't as fast as me, so I had to turn around and grab her by the hand and pull her along. Once we made it to the restaurant, etc., we tried to tell someone to get the police, but no one understood us due to the language barrier, so we eventually gave up and went home. We got back safely and were unharmed, although a little shaken up, but after that night, we stayed in groups of at least 3 at all times, and didn't go down quiet roads at night. It creeps me out still thinking about what could have happened if I had taken a little bit longer, and he managed to get her, or even if we had just been a little more drunk and unaware of our surroundings. So, to the naked man in the bushes, let's not meet again.
So, I go walking in the cemetery near my house almost every day. This time, I decided I would go later than usual. It was around 7 p.m. and still pretty light out. I had my phone and pepper spray. As I was crossing the busy street, which stood between my neighborhood and the cemetery, a black SUV slowed down right next to me and said the usual catcall-ish stuff. Being that I get catcalled really often, I ignore it and expect the SUV to keep driving once I make it to the cemetery. Well, once I was in the cemetery, the car made a U-turn and proceeded to head back into the cemetery. My heart sank. I knew that I couldn't go back to my house because they would entail me crossing the really busy street and potentially showing this guy where I live. As the car drives into the cemetery, I went and walked into one of the plots so I could hide myself. I basically crouched down behind a tombstone and pray that they won't see me. The car slows to a crawl and was slowly driving around, looking for me. I just stay hidden and soon enough the car drives away. I waited behind the grave for a while after that because something told me to stay there longer. Sure enough, 5 minutes later the SUV was back. I know it was the same car because of the bumper stickers. Not only was the SUV back, but it was back with another car. Both of the cars were just slowly driving around where I was. The driver of the car was yelling something along the lines of, "I'm gonna find you, bitch." When I tell y'all I was scared shitless, I was scared shitless. Thank God both of the cars went out of sight really far back into the cemetery. I saw my chance and sprinted out of the cemetery across the street. I got home safe, but I just kept replaying what could have happened if I had done something different. I know I wasn't hurt, but I can't get it off my mind. My city has a bad human trafficking problem, so I'm terrified by what could have happened. So, scary guy in a black SUV, let's never meet again.
This story happened to me when I was a kid, and it's probably one of the creepiest stories I have to tell. I think I was about 9 or 10 when this happened. It was definitely my birthday, because we had the party at a nearby park. I think it had been raining, but I was still excited that it was my birthday. We all had a good time, and me and my brother opened our presents and ate cake. The one day kids love as much as their birthday is Christmas, and I was really happy with all the presents my friends had gotten me. By the time the party was over, it had stopped raining, and the sun was starting to come out. We picked up everything and put the presents in the car. Then we started to drive back home. The exit to the rather large park we had been at goes through a big fancy metal gate and opens out at a circular intersection. We pulled into the intersection and took a left turn towards the state highway. This might be important later. Everything seemed so nice and normal at first, until we stopped at a crosswalk down the road from my street. I noticed my dad looking into the rearview mirror, and he muttered something to my mom. We kept driving and turned down my street, then into my driveway. I unbuckled and turned around to see what was the matter. I watched as my dad walked to the red car, maybe a sedan or a Prius, and spoke to the lady driving it. We all watched as she sped away. I remember getting really scared, and my mom brought me and my brother inside while my dad called the cops. An officer arrived at our house shortly. My dad told them what had happened. Apparently, when we stopped at the crosswalk, he noticed the lady in the car behind us filming us. He watched to see if she followed us, which she did. Of course, when we got home and he approached her, all she said was, "I got what I want." The officer assured us that a lot of people like to film the stuff around them, as this was the time when cameras like GoPros were becoming popular. To this day, I'm not sure why exactly that lady filmed us. Maybe we cut her off at the intersection, or she didn't notice us stopping at the light ahead, braking just in time to prevent a fender bender and blaming it on us. We never heard anything of her again, but I know this sounds cheesy, but it's the truth. I sometimes wonder if she'll be back. So, to the creepy lady who filmed my family on my birthday, let's not meet. Hey guys, I want to thank you for listening. If you haven't yet, please consider clicking that subscribe button and bell icon to get notified of all future videos. And if you do hit the bell icon, make sure to select all so you actually see my videos, because YouTube will be a bitch and just won't send you them. I also try to post around 5 times a week, and if you have a story of your own and would like to be featured on the channel, head over to my subreddit r/GensenOfficial. And if you want early access to my videos as well as your name featured on the video, please head over to Patreon, where only $1 a month gets you that and some other fun perks. I've also got merch now over on Spreadshirt. As well, offer all my videos on my podcast that can be found on all major podcast services. All links will be located in the description field. I hope everyone has a good night, and remember, keep it spooky.